Welcome to Second Act Travels, the podcast for curious midlife explorers ready to trade crowded summers for smart, meaningful, off-season adventures. If you're over 50 and dreaming of meaningful travel that fits your freedom and your budget, you're in the right place. I'm Elizabeth, and each week I'll bring you tips, stories, and inspiration to help you travel deeper, go further, and embrace your second act with confidence. All right. Well, welcome back to Second Act Travels. I always find that the holidays from October, November, and December just all sort of slide into one another. I call it Octember. So I was in the holiday slide and I took a little break from podcasting, but I'm back. Today, I wanted to talk about adventure. So if you know me, you know that I love to read, and I read all kinds of genre, whether it's fantasy or nonfiction or mystery, I love. Anyway, I have this theory that sometimes the right book finds you, no matter where you are. And I was searching around for something to read. It might have been on my Kindle. In fact, I'm sure I was. And I came across a book by Joyce Mackey. I'll put the information in the show notes for you. And it was called Walking the Thames River Path, One Woman's Solo Journey of Adventure and Self-Discovery. But this caught my eye, and I thought, wow, what's it like to walk along the Thames River in England? So I read the book, and I fell in love with it. This woman walked the Thames Path, I believe, in the early 1990s, and she did it alone. The Thames Path is 184 miles long, or it was at the time. It's a little bit longer now because it goes right to the North Sea. But when she walked it, it stopped at Greenwich. And I finished the book and I said, well, heck, if she can do it right, I can do it right. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to walk the Thames Path National Trail? So I began doing some research. Anyway, so I did some research and I happened to mention to a friend of mine in New York City that I was thinking about hiking the Thames Path. And he said that was a great idea, didn't say too much more about it. But when I returned home to upstate New York, and I got my mail one day, a couple days before Christmas, and in it was a package from my friend James. And in there was a book published in 1857, I believe, and it was called Rambles by Rivers. And it was about a man hiking the Thames River from source to sea. I thought, this is a sign from the universe that I need to explore this. So I decided right then and there to set a goal that as soon as COVID was over, I was going to walk the Thames Path. Here's how I did it. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what walking the Thames Path is actually like. And I'm not sure how much you've read from people about long distance hiking. I imagine many of you have read Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods, where he hiked the Appalachian Trail, or Cheryl Strayed's book Wild, where she hikes the Pacific Crest Trail, or Treks by Robin Davidson. She hikes with 3 camels across the Australian desert. Those are really epic tales, and these people are, concerned about carrying water, and they're carrying all their cooking supplies and their food and their tent. And they're really not seeing anyone for even days at a time in some places. Anyway, the Thames Path is nothing like that. And my hike was absolutely nothing like that. The Thames Path is perfect for this reason, which is it allows you to do some long distance hiking, but never takes you too far away from civilization. The Thames Path starts in the Cotswolds. It's a fairly remote area, but you're always within 7 to 10 miles of a town. Cell phone service is absolutely fine. You can call anywhere, anytime. There's a nice path. It's very well maintained, extremely well marked. You're not going to get lost. And frankly, all you're doing is walking by a river. So, you look for the river and you're probably on the right track, as long as you stay by it. The other thing is, and I cannot stress this enough, for the beginning hiker, there are no hills on the Thames Path. So very, very easy hiking. But every night I had a nice warm bed in a pub or a bed and breakfast, and I would have a glass of wine with my dinner. I would call home and make sure everything was okay there. See, and there were no wild animals and certainly no snakes like in Australia. In fact, that's one of the reasons I chose to walk in November because I'm so scared of snakes and I knew I probably wouldn't see one during the month of November. So that's what I mean by the Thames Path being a really easy beginner hike. All right, so I decided to walk the path. And I decided on November because one, I hate snakes, as I just said. I also don't like crowds. And I knew that November would be kind of a good sweet spot. It wouldn't be too cold to walk and it would be off season. I like to travel off season and I wouldn't have trouble finding inns to stay at every night. I wouldn't have to worry about that. And I could take my time. I wouldn't have to worry about making a reservation and sticking to that plan. Anyway, so while I'm preparing, I did some research. As I said before, the Thames Path is, at the time, it was 185 miles long. Since I walked it in 2021, they've added 30 more miles. So now, instead of the Thames River path stopping at the Thames Barrier, it goes on to the North Sea. It actually meets the sea. But I wanted to walk from the source in the Cotswolds to the Thames Barrier, which protects London from flooding. It's a big structure right in the middle of the Thames. Anyway, I set about doing a fair amount of research, and I'll put all my resources in my show notes and they are in my blog. So I'll link to my blog so that you can see exactly what I used. The first thing I did was that I bought a really good hiking guide, and I totally recommend the Trailblazer Guide series. They are published in the UK. They are extremely readable and entertaining, and they break down each section into the places you're going to see along the way, what the terrain is like, and then they give you options for lodging, whether it's camping or hostels or a bed and breakfast or a pub. They'll give you recommendations for food and lodging. And I just found that the book was so readable. Obviously, you have to find what works best for you. Some people use the Cicerone guides, and those are fine as well. But for me, Trailblazer is my preference. So I used the Trailblazer and I read it cover to cover, probably 2 times, maybe even more. And I also joined some Facebook groups. This is where I think Facebook is really good. Social media is good for that. I joined 2 or 3 groups on the Facebook page about walking the Thames, long distance hiking or hiking in the UK. And then I learned an awful lot. And then I also joined a group called Love Her Wild, which is on Facebook as well, because that is about women having outdoor adventures. And I thought that that would be really helpful. So those are the resources that I used quickly. And then I will put the full list with a link to my blog in the show notes. And I encourage you, if you're thinking about walking the Thames Path, to read as much as you can, really. Now, as I've said in the past, I keep this podcast to 10 minutes because I know that you have a busy schedule and you like to listen in the car in between errands and things. So I'm going to stop here for part 1, and then we'll continue on next week or so with Thames Path part 2, where I'll talk about packing for the trip, what you absolutely must bring with you, and some other helpful tips. So join me in a couple of weeks for part 2 of our Walking the Thames Path National Trail. And if you want to read the full account of my trip, you can definitely check out my blog at secondacttravels.com. Have a great week, and I'll see you back here soon. So thanks so much for checking Second Act Travels out, and I'll see you back here soon.